Hi, this is Lynn, and welcome to Autism Shake Off. Today is Thursday, 4th January 2024, and How I Shook Off Autism Part 2 is the title of today's episode. Episode 2. Episode 1 is How I Shook Off Autism Part 1, and it's already uploaded, so if you want to find out what I said then, you can refer back to that. But we're going to continue and talk about How I Shook Off Autism Part 2. Until I truly met Jesus, as I said in my previous part 1 of this message, I said, until I truly met Jesus, or rather Jesus met me at the age of 12 years. At that all-night prayer and worship session in a house in South London, I was just stumbling through life and living a life of limitations because of autism. Trauma brought on by a distressed birth. Some of the autistic characteristics or character traits I exhibited as a child included: 1. Being very quiet and reserved. It took me longer to learn new things, education-wise especially, and I spent many times crying out of frustration. This is the problem that happens to many autistic people, the struggle. 3. I saw things differently, and I still see things differently. And I did things differently, and I still do things differently. So not all characteristics of autistic people is bad. In fact, this is a good characteristic to have. We can't all be the same. For example, I can write with both my right hand and my left hand. I'm actually ambidextrous. That is how you describe somebody who can write with both their right and left hand. Ambidextrous. But I will classify myself as being largely right-handed. But when I'm washing with my hands, like my clothes, my dominant hand and my stronger hand is my left hand. Sometimes opening bottle tops, like plastic drink bottles, or it's easier for me to use my left hand to do that. In fact, many people have told me that my mannerisms suggest that I am left-handed, but I'm largely right-handed. A lot of people have, especially in a developing country like Ghana, a lot of people have an issue with people who use their left hand, because it's seen to be the hand that you use to do filthy exercises. But for somebody who's ambidextrous, to me, it's normal to use either my right or left hand. So sometimes when I'm in the presence of people who feel that way and I do something with my left hand, they get offended. So that's something I'm learning to curb, because when you are in a certain environment, you've got to adjust the way you do things. Fourthly, as a child, I was so withdrawn that if I was in a room and the phone rang, in those days there were no mobile phones, just landlines or dial-up phones, the ones that you put your finger in and dial. If today you show somebody that type of phone, they'll look at you in mystery and wonder, how do you use this? What is this? And how do you use it? But those were the type of phones we had in those days. So if I came into a room and the phone started ringing, and maybe I was the only one in the room, or somebody expected me to pick up the phone, I won't pick up the phone. I'll just leave the room because I did not want to talk to anyone. This changed when I was in university. I lived on campus. In fact, it was before university, because after secondary school, I decided that I wanted to learn how to drive. So I I took a year out, so I decided I wanted to learn how to drive. So I looked in a book called The Yellow Pages. They have them in the UK. And I called all the driving schools that were in the locality in my London borough. And I found out the cheapest instructor, and it was £10 per hour in those days. So I called the person up, and I used my money that I'd saved up from odd jobs and part-time working while I was in school, because I started working when I was 15 years old in what they used to call Zetta's pools. It's like how you have a online betting, but it wasn't online. In those days, there was no online betting. There was only offline betting. And Zetta's pools was one of those companies that did the betting. And we used to go, me and my twin sister used to go to the Zetta's pools factory because we wanted to earn money on holidays. It was a hard, tedious job and very boring. We had to organize all the pools tickets that people had submitted and put them all into sort of scan them all into the system. In those days they had very defunct, very old dinosaur machines, because computers hadn't really been developed that well. So I did that. So basically, if I entered a room and the phone rang, I would just leave the room because I didn't want to pick up the phone and talk to anyone. This changed when I finished secondary school and started driving. Obviously, I had to interact with the driving instructor, so obviously things changed. And also when I went to university, there was a real change. I lived on campus at university for 3 years. I had a 4-year sandwich course at university. And for 3 years, I was fortunate enough to get accommodation on campus for 3 years. Most people don't even get more than 1 year. At least a friend of mine, he had to find accommodation in the town where the university was. And things are more expensive if you live off campus than if you live on campus. So things were a lot cheaper. So I was fortunate in those days there were no student loans, and I also got a scholarship. So I essentially went through university without paying any student loans or getting debt. I went through university debt-free in those days, and it's all to the glory of God, because if I didn't get the scholarship, I wouldn't be able to go to university. So I just thank God. So I was fortunate to live on campus for the duration of 3 years. And when I came to university, they encouraged us to be part of societies and groups, and I decided I wanted to be a DJ on our university campus radio station. So during my 3 years, I joined the university radio station, campus radio, as a DJ, and I also joined an organization for students who were interested in business and leadership called ISEC. At the time, ISEC was the largest student body outside of student body organization. ISEC is spelled AIESEC, and is a global youth-run platform for young people to develop their leadership potential through practical experiences of many kinds, including internships, volunteering opportunities, and more. ISEC is a non-governmental organization and not-for-profit organization entirely run by youth for youth. at university, I was forced to come out of my shell and speak, because sometimes with ISEC we had speaking engagements. We traveled from different campuses, different universities, and we did all sorts of things, speaking related things and leadership related exercises. We took trips here, there, and everywhere. So these things forced me to come out of my shell and speak when I was at university especially. And as life and work would have it, during my 1-year internship, I was blessed and fortunate enough to work for a major oil company in London as a marketing analyst. I was actually well paid for a student, somebody who hadn't finished their degree. Because in those days, if you got a 1-year internship with one of the oil companies, you would be paid almost as somebody who had graduated. So the salary went a long way, and because I was living at home and going to work in London, I could save a lot of my money. So as a marketing analyst with an oil company, speaking was a must. Then when I finished my management sciences degree, my first job out of university, I ended up working in a factory just outside of Manchester. So now I had to actually move from London, my parents' home in London, and find accommodation and live in Manchester so that I could travel from Manchester to just outside Manchester where the factory was. And the job I got was as a supply chain management. And as part of the job, I had to have daily video conferences with our USA factory, the management of our USA factory, to communicate with them figures about how to plan their factory and how the planning of the factory in the UK was. So that meant that I had to be able to talk a lot and to also give accurate information. So for them to have trusted somebody just out of university with this very, very, very important role, I was thrust into this situation just out of university. But for me, it was good. At the end of that job, I was actually good at that job. It was good for me and I was good at that job. But I miss my family a lot. So within 2 years, I decided that I wanted to apply for a job nearer London. So I got a job just outside London, in Greater London, more in Surrey sides. And I applied to a telecoms manufacturer, one of the top tier telecoms manufacturers in the world at the time. And I applied for a buyer's job in that telecoms manufacturer. By this time, mobile phones were rapidly being adopted and being mass produced. So I was working for the part of that telecoms manufacturer where they manufactured base stations. Base stations are physical infrastructure that allows mobile phone calls to be transmitted from one place to the other. And these physical infrastructures can be found in basements of hotels, for example, on hilltops and along the motorways and such. So at the time, I was very fortunate to land such a great job in a fast-growing tech company. As a buyer, you do a lot of talking, so all these experiences helped me. And I moved, when I joined the telecoms manufacturer, I moved from from the base station business into the mobile phone business. And I moved and became a business development and marketing specialist with global remit. So I traveled all over the world on behalf of the company and did a lot of exciting things, because that was a time that mobile phones were being transitioned from voice only to data. We used to have, we pioneered music on the phone and services on the phone. I was part of a brand new business unit that was set up purposely for that. That was the emergence of doing data related stuff on phones. So yeah, it was an exciting time. And I got to do a lot of, future related stuff, because we had like a 25-year roadmap. So we always planned for future things, because a lot of things we did were to do with launches of phones with services on the roadmaps. So that's what I did. So as a buyer, when I initially joined the telecoms manufacturer, I was buying oscillators, crystals, chips. During my time as a buyer, I decided to go to school, back to school, to night school, to study to acquire my charter status as a buyer with the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply UK. With the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply UK, I had already acquired my Chartered Institute of Marketing professional qualification with as a my charter status with the Chartered Institute of Marketing, United Kingdom, as part of my management sciences degree by then. So I became both a chartered marketer and a chartered buyer. Normally, chartered marketers and chartered buyers do not see eye to eye, but I had acquired expertise and insight into both these divergent areas. This gave me a unique perspective of things. Whilst I was moving ahead with my career, I was very active in the church. As a child from the age of 12, I had an interest in videoing people in computers, information technology, laptops, coding. In fact, I did computer science as part of my GCSEs. Through volunteering at the church, I got into graphic designing as well. Later, I went into printing, and then I got involved as a volunteer, which I'm still at. I volunteer a lot at a non-profit organization. And here I am today, starting this podcast, Autism Shake Off podcast. So the combination of Jesus and these practical steps, actually forcing myself to, come out of my shell, is what has led me to shake off autism largely. On the next podcast, we will examine some of the strange traits of people who have been diagnosed with autism or have been diagnosed as autistic, and look at some practical coping mechanisms that can be employed if you live with autistic people or look after autistic people. Until we meet next time, you can check out How I Shook Off Autism Part 1, which is already uploaded for your perusal. If you like this type of content, kindly share and subscribe. Thank you, and see you next time. If you have any comments are welcome. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye for now.